Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Clockedin with me, your host, Jordan Edwards. I'm thrilled to have you tune in as we dive into the dynamic world of productivity, success, and stories of incredible individuals who've mastered the art of getting things done. Whether you're commuting, hitting the gym, or just relaxing at home, this podcast is the go-to source for inspiration and actionable tips to level up your productivity game. I'm on a mission to unravel the secrets of those who seem to effortlessly manage their time and achieve their goals. So if you're ready to clock in and unlock your full potential, you're in the right place. We've got a lineup of amazing guests, industry experts, and thought leaders who will share their insights and strategies to help us crush your to-do list and make the most out of every moment. Get ready to get inspired, motivated, and equipped with the tools you need to supercharge your productivity. This is Clockedin with Jordan Edwards. Let's dive in. Hey, what's going on, guys? I got a special guest here today. We have Steve Kidd, who is living beyond the bleeding edge to the arrow point is slicing in front of it. He's a business coach that's helping authors become bestsellers, and he's been doing it for a long time, and he's very knowledgeable. Steve, how are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm doing awesome. I'm excited to have you on. I'm really interested in where this is going to go and what we're going to discuss. But where does your story really start?
Well, and we didn't even talk about this when you and I were talking before, but actually I started selling when I was 5 years old. So, and that's a really fun story, you know. In fact, I live now with my older brother. We're remodeling a house, and he was telling me his side of the story. But basically, my brothers, my parents bought for them greeting cards and holiday napkins to sell to raise money. And they were struggling with it. Plus, they decided pretty quickly they'd rather do lawn mowing. My oldest brother is 7 years older than me. You know, me at 5 years old, I was like, can I go sell them? And as my brother tells the story, he's like, it was so annoying because you'd go into houses, we'd tell you we already went there and they said no, and you'd come out and have sold them to them. Now, granted, selling at five is way easier than it is when you're a little older. But so as soon as I was an adult, I was in the sales and marketing field, and I officially started my marketing company in February of 1988.
Wow. And I love that your parents exposed you to selling at such a young age, because a lot of people have this connotation, selling is bad, selling is not good. And it's a complete, everything you do is because you were sold in one capacity or another. You were sold to be on a podcast, or I was sold to have you on the podcast, or we're sold to go to dinner somewhere. Everyone is sold constantly to do different activities, and we just don't realize it.
Absolutely.
So for you, 1988, what's going on in the marketing field? Because for me, I know marketing is internet marketing, and it's so what was it?
Well, I did a lot of consulting. Most of what I worked in those days was actually the audio video. So everything from radio stations to public venues, especially like churches, that have AV equipment that they have. That was a lot of what I was working in. A lot of marketing in those days was helping people understand. You would have great big thick catalogs, and now you think about an online catalog, and it has, it's as wide as your computer screen is, right? But back in the day, they were like encyclopedias of products. And so one of the big things you did was you would talk to the person, find out what their needs were, and then go through thousands upon thousands of different materials and find what is right for that person, and then in addition to that, helping people understand, simple things like what kind of a difference. Well, like today, here's a perfect example. I've got a ring light right up here above me, and a ring light's really simple. You can spend anywhere from 25 to probably $2,500 on a ring light, just depending on how bougie you want to get with it, but until you have somebody explain to you what a ring light does and why you need it, and why the green screen behind me, why that's better than just a white wall behind you, and how that works, and those kind of things. That's a lot of what we were doing, just in things that aren't that dissimilar to what we use on the internet now, but in in day-to-day activities. So like I said, with anything from as simple as a radio for, a stereo for your car, all the way up to, high-end, broadcast studio equipment for radio stations.
Wow. So a lot of it was the education.
Yeah. I
Really,
mean, and really marketing, that's really what it is. It's letting the consumer know, A, that they need something, and B, this is what of the something they need that they need.
yeah. No, absolutely. Because I think about it, before I had this background and before I had this ring light, it's just, the videos are brutal, but that's just part of the learning process. It takes time. Absolutely. And for you, I know you were a very early pioneer in what was becoming of the internet. And where did that kind of land with you? How did you get open to that idea?
So a buddy of mine, I had a computer, and I've had computers, I mean, I actually started back right before the personal computer actually was publicly available. TSR 80s were just beginning to start coming out. Most of you probably don't even know what a TSR 80 is, because Radio Shack doesn't even exist anymore, let alone sell personal computers. But, before Apple had the Apple computer at all, we were beginning to start doing those things, and they were beginning to start developing the concept of what if everybody could have a computer in their house. And that's kind of where I got started. Is I just love computers, and everything from the old version of Nintendos, way
Yeah.
back, the original Nintendo, and those kind of things. And then getting to be able to play some of those games on computer was even better. And I was 19 at the time, so I was totally into video games and stuff.
Yeah.
But then a buddy of mine had this thing called a modem,
Yeah.
the best way to understand a modem is we've all sent a fax. A fax machine uses a modem to use the phone line to call another phone that has also a fax machine on it, and it sends a digital signal across that line that then is translated back out and printed out on paper. That is the original concept, without getting into really deep technical stuff. The original concept of where of what was the formation of the internet is, could we from a computer screen send that same digital information and then have it show up on somebody else's computer screen? And so we're talking about like letters, at most maybe ASCII characters, like the hashtag, where you could make this beautiful picture with all hashtags around the border, and you have to think it through of, this is the top, middle, and there's this many space. I mean, it's, I can't say that I was a graphic artist in those days, but that's what it takes to be able to make a circle. You have to think about the dot here and then the two, and and each one down the road, and those kind of graphics. And so those were the early days, and I was just fascinated by the concept of dialing into someplace and picking up, whether it was information or playing a game or whatever. And so
Yeah.
then, the internet came around and began to build, and we began to get browsers so that you didn't have to, create graphics in hashtags, and the world began to unfold. And although the internet was a very different world then than it is now, it was really cool to be part of.
Yeah. And was it something that you were interested, because it was so constrictive? Like in the beginning, whenever there's a new technology, it's very difficult, and there's the ease of use is just not there. As you were just explaining brilliantly how a fax machine works, as you sit there and you really think about it, you're like, wow, that's really impressive. That, like, you don't think about the fact that you send an email to someone and you're like, wow, that went into the ether and it kind of came back on their side, and you don't even think about that stuff because it's so normal to us. But at that time, it was completely different. And yeah.
Yeah, well, and I have the advantage or disadvantage, depending on the day of the week and whether you're talking to one of my ex-wives or myself. But that's kind of the way my brain works. You're talking about the fact that I live, not even on the bleeding edge, but in the air that the arrow point is slicing through on that, my brain just sees something like, a modem that's moving at these incredibly slow rates. And my brain is like, imagine if you could take, and we're talking VHS tapes, the DVDs were just being conceptualized and then they started coming out, right around a couple of years after when I was first starting about that. But think about the concept of, wouldn't it be cool if you could just have that whole movie right on your computer screen? And the reality of it is that technology, there was no way to do it, but my mind was thinking in those realms. So even though it was really difficult, my brain just kind of got it and kind of started seeing things as possibilities, and just the imagination. My brother even was telling me the other day, I evidently, way back, even still when I was in high school or early college, told somebody, someday you will do everything that you do on the computer. And of course they all were like, yeah, shut up, kid, I mean, what do you know? But I just had that vision of what our world is today. I mean, imagine your world without your computer now, or even the computer that is your phone.
Yeah, and when someone has that type of conviction and understanding it, it allows for a lot more tokens of possibility, because it's not a restrictive mindset, but it's an open mindset. So whenever there's new technology for the listeners, it's something to not be fret about or be afraid about, but it's more something to be like, wow, how can this enhance my life? Or
Yeah.
because it kind of opens the different areas. And with you, how did all this kind of connect with your marketing firm?
So, I mean, for a long time, it was more of a curiosity. You're talking about going from 1988 to essentially about 94, when I was able to have the equipment, really, as more than anything else, to be able to go on to bulletin boards. And the Netscape Navigator 1.0 came out and really changed the game when you had a browser. I began to actually just do volunteer work to find out, what is this thing and how much possibility it had. And it was in that I began to see just how little people who really were doing these incredible technology things understood the basic mechanics of, something as simple as, when you think of getting a soda to drink, you think, I want a Coke. Even if you don't really like Coke, somebody says, do you want a Coke? And you have Mountain Dew in the refrigerator. You don't go, no, I want a Mountain Dew. You just say yes. And they bring you the Mountain Dew because that's what's in the refrigerator. That's the ultimate of marketing. And like you said, in those early days, they were deeply intelligent technical people, but they didn't really understand the sales and marketing field at all. So it was just a fun playground to play around in.
Yeah, and that transition of, we'll actually dive a little bit deeper in that, in regard to the tech versus the actual bringing it to the consumer, because the consumer speaks very different than the tech guys. And a lot of
Absolutely.
people know that if they've ever worked on any big technical project, you can, it's all English, but it's different languages.
Barely English. Yeah. I used to actually, probably for the first, I don't know, 5 to 10 years, most of what I did, I referred to, I didn't even call I mean, I was technically a marketing company, but I didn't really use that phrase with people. What I usually told people was, I translate tech back into English, because a guy who's used to talking in whatever programming language, whether you're talking, most basic HTML, or you're talking, COBOL or something like that,
Yeah,
they get so used to talking in expressions that
the
they don't
jargon. Yeah,
really, they don't anymore really understand English. And so something as simple as what I was talking about with, ASCII drawings, and giving you the example of that, their brains couldn't work out with that. They'd just be like, yeah, it's an ASCII emulator, and it, takes the image from my computer and puts it onto yours. And the person's like, what did
slow
that
down.
mean? What does emulator mean? And so that's what I spent a lot of time, in that marketing realm, was just really helping people understand these crazy words that brilliant people were using that nobody else understood.
That's awesome. And when did you know it was really time to, like, one of the things I want to also commend you about is the fact that you said you volunteered. Like, even when you got your business, you got your stuff going on, you still found time to volunteer to learn something new because you were interested in it. And I think everyone should take note of that, because there's a lot of people end up marrying their job, and they get stuck in their job, and they don't take time to lift their head up and go, I'm interested in that. Let me learn about that, and learn for free without making money. So foreign. But you got to learn somehow. But when did you really feel that you were implementing it into the everyday business that you were talking with? Like, when did you see like internet marketing and all of that come to be?
So after about almost 2 years of, just in my, quote unquote spare time, whatever that means, you know, um, usually it meant, middle of the night, I was not sleeping time,
Yeah,
I actually answered an ad. I was looking for supplemental income
yeah,
because, that's one of the other things that we don't often talk about in the early days of our businesses is sometimes you have to work a job on top of having your business. So you
of
get to,
course.
live indoors.
Yeah,
um, and I was looking for something and I answered an ad that was for a sales position for a dial up internet company, one of the local ones. And I started out literally just calling. Mostly what I was selling actually was website development, really early website development, because I mean, you're still talking 1996. So,
yeah,
it was probably a year and a half into that before Flash started even being developed.
yeah,
And we had a couple of high end programs that did some stuff in PHP and Cold Fusion, but most of it was just basic HTML websites. And I was selling that to businesses. And that's really where I made that leap, is because then about 4 or 5 months into that, the guy that was the operations manager there left for whatever reason. I don't remember now why, but I was already working there, and the owner asked me if I wanted to take over the job as operations manager at the company, and I did. And that really, massively propelled me into the space of something that went from a curiosity and a way to pay the bills to something that I really had to really learn, because now people were asking me, questions that I couldn't just be like, well, I don't know. Hold on a second. Let me go ask somebody.
yeah. No, actually, you were forced to become an expert, which is super important. That's a very important area.
Yeah.
That's good to do.
Now, the cool part about it is those early days of the internet, this doesn't exist anymore. I wish it did. It was such an open, I mean, we all have heard the concept of open source, and open source code and freeware and stuff like that. It was totally that everywhere. I could call my major competitor, like my very direct competitor, and just literally say to them, I want to sell a product doing XYZ. How are you doing that? And they would just tell me literally everything they were doing, nothing held back, no tricks or tips or secrets that they wouldn't just tell me. They'd tell me absolutely how to do it. And it was just a real community of sharing and knowing that, there's billions of people in the world, and no one of us can reach all of them anyway. And so if we make opportunity for everybody, it makes us all better versus, when we hold on so tightly to the few people we have, it ends up diminishing us and the next person who might do something really amazing.
Yeah, I love that, because it's more the abundance mindset instead of the scarcity of, this is all I got, this is only for me. And one of the other big things that you brought up is like literally open source. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it's basically like showing the code. Like, it's like exactly like step by step how it was done. Correct? Or is
Oh
that
yeah.
different?
Oh yeah. I mean, open source these days would be the code, and typically either in notes inside of the code or a separate document that's literally telling you do this, do that, do this. It would
Like, it
be,
literally tells you how to do it. And this is
yeah.
like, these are businesses who are trying to grow, and people, it's, but I love that. That's one of the things that I think is super cool when there's new technology and people are kind of geeking out about it a little bit is the fact that you're able to build and foster that community, because no one cared about the other person building it, because at the same time, you're one another, you're connecting on something a lot deeper. And if you walked around, you couldn't really talk to anyone else about it. So
Right.
it's like we're allies or we're not.
Well, I'll give you a perfect example. Back in the day, 2001-ish, don't quote me on this, all right? I'm guessing at what the date was. One of my really good friends was talking to municipalities about a municipally owned fiber to the home network, and adding on top of that wireless networks. So these days, with your cell phone, with most of the right carriers, there's very few places you can go where you can't get a cell signal.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a few places you can be driving through and you're like, I'm in the middle of nowhere, I can't even get a cell, but it's pretty rare these days.
Yeah.
What he was trying to help the neighborhoods understand is that if the city owned, and they had the fiber wires to the places and then had set up the Wi-Fi hotspots all around the city, it would, as each person became a user of their internet service company, it expanded the web, if you will, of the available wireless network. So all of us have wireless. Some of you maybe have even heard of the mesh network systems that you can use for your router now, so that, like, if you can't get signal on the other side of your house, you can put another unit over there and another one here in this corner, and it kind of creates like a spider web so that you get better signal across. Depends on how big your house is,
Yeah.
But it's the same kind of concept when you have two, the distance between it and the way around. But then when you add the third, and the more you add in, the more it becomes more and more like that spider web, and it just broadens out and makes the signal better and that kind of thing. And really, when you go back to business and to sharing of technology, that's really what happens is each person that uses that, it exponentially gets better and bigger for everybody else versus smaller and more limited, which is what we typically think.
Yeah. So that is one thing that I touched on a little bit, but I think that's so important for us to realize. And even if it's not technology based and it's just life based, that the more we help each other, we kind of lift everybody up. It's something to definitely realize, and it's really, really important. So where are we at? 2001. What happens next in your journey?
So I mean, and of course we went through the the dot bomb, the dot-com bubble and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And you saw, I mean, because previous to that, investors were throwing money at internet companies. The general thought process was, if I invest in 10 companies and one of them makes it, I'll make so much money off of that one that it'll be worth having lost money on the other nine. And of course that was going to blow up. You know what I mean?
Of course.
But I was really blessed that I had those early days, because during that difficult time, I already knew who I was and what I was doing. And we just kept continuing, because I was marketing with people before there was the internet. And I just continued that on with internet stuff. And then, even when it became difficult, we had come far enough ahead that the internet wasn't going to stop. You know what I mean? It wasn't like in 2001, it was just like, and then the internet ended and everybody said, well, that was fun. And it wasn't like MySpace. You know what I mean? I mean, who knows who's heard of MySpace anymore? It didn't do like that. Some of the things died off, but the internet itself stayed around. And so we did that. And then in 2007, it's actually another funny story. My second youngest daughter and my then wife were huge fans of the movie Twilight, and they were traveling around. We lived near Portland, and most of the movie was filmed in and around there, the first one. They went to all the locations and they were blogging about all the places they found. And I helped them develop it into a book. And we literally self-published it. Originally we were printing it off of a printer at our house, self-published,
Wow. Wow.
and then discovered CreateSpace, who either right after that or right around that same time was being acquired by Amazon. But it blew up. It became the number one best-selling movie related travel guide on Amazon for a short period of time. And that's where we really began to see just how powerful not just having a book, but being a bestseller really is when it comes to your marketing.
Yeah. And was that just a prototype, like just trying it out? Because the reason I ask is because I feel like there's a big stigma with books where people are like, I've been working on this for 20 years. I've been doing this forever. And it seems like they felt very comfortable. Just put it out. Let's do it. Like, let's have the book. Let's see what it's about.
Yeah. And really, and I would say even to some extent, people now today, for my ex-wife, the same is true. She would be the first one to tell you that book would have never gotten published if I hadn't been there. I took the documents and I formatted the document and I, did the things in that case, I had to actually do the research to learn how to, be able to get it to, book style print off of the printer that we then had, and I mean, it was a very different animal from, what you can do now with Amazon print on demand service. And then later on, like I said, when we went to CreateSpace, I had to relearn that. But often, almost always, we need somebody that's just telling us, hey, there's somebody that needs that information, because the reason why the book sold so well is because, I mean, I still get calls on that crazy book and the website that came with it, people wanting to know if I can do a tour to show them those filming locations now. That movie came out in 2007. The book came out in early 2008, and I'm still getting calls from people emails from people who would like to take tours on that now. But it's about the fact that people want it, but they can't get the information until we put it out where they can get it. When it's in our head, when it's on our computer, when it's sitting on our desk, it does nobody, including ourselves, any good.
Yeah, and there's also the whole self-worth. It is what I'm saying important, and people are questioning that. And I mean, you just explained right there where it's not like they were travel guides. They were just Twilight enthusiasts. They were just excited about it and got the information. And you could even build a travel business on the back of that book.
Yeah.
And it sounds like it would be successful.
We, in fact, actually even built an entire retail store. My second youngest daughter built an entire retail store in the city of St. Helens, where some of the scenes were filmed at, off of the power and the popularity of that book.
Wow. That's profound.
Yeah.
So what is it what is so big about books? Why do books matter?
Well, first of all, books are never going to go away. I mean, I remember back in the day when internet companies were trying to convince newspapers that, within a year, there would be no more print newspapers. I don't know if you've noticed, but they still exist now. And that was back in the, mid 90s. Same thing's true with books. There is definitely something about the tactile nature of a book. And your favorite book, I don't care if you get the book in audiobook or ebook or whatever, your favorite books, there's just something about owning it, about having it on your shelf. I mean, I personally, I really like Terry Brooks. He's one of my very favorite authors. There's a lot of his books that even after I had read them, I went and I bought, like all of the Shannara series, just because I wanted them on my shelf, and I don't have that bookshelf set up at this house yet, but, I used to have in the room I was in, all of the walls were just bookshelves, and they were just, filled with, not informational books. They were just fun reading books of, authors that I just loved reading their stuff. And so books are never going to go anywhere. But when you look at it from a marketing standpoint, which I think is more what you're asking, I even heard somebody say it on television today. There's one thing to learn something from somebody who teaches on a particular thing. It's a whole nother level to get taught it by the guy who wrote the book on it.
Yeah.
And even
Yeah.
more so, if that book is a bestseller, this is the best-selling author about how to unplug your sink.
Yeah.
I mean, you may not have a clogged sink right now, but if your sink gets clogged up, who do you want to advise you how to unclog the sink? Some guy that lives next door to you, or the guy that wrote the best-selling book on how to unclog a sink?
Yeah. I mean, you're making some very valid points. Um, and actually, for myself, I've always wanted a bookshelf where I've completed the books and then someone can come in. I've imagined this in my head where someone comes in and I go, you pull it off and you show them a lesson from the book. I always thought that was really cool. Um, but even what you're saying, like the best selling book helps with getting known and being who you are and stepping into your truth of you can do this. You are this person.
In fact, a bestseller is the number one influencer credential in the world right now.
That's wild.
Yeah. My medical doctors would be the first ones to tell you that they've been a doctor in their field for 20 years and they've gotten more exposure and more notoriety from being a best-selling author than from being a noted doctor in their field. And I've
Yeah.
even worked with doctors who have been on television shows and things like that.
Because just think about it. The audience you're going to pull from being a doctor is one, an audience. The audience you can pull from a book, it's so wide ranging
Yeah.
because you don't have to be sick to go there.
Right.
It's very interesting. So what did you find out about these books? Obviously you found out that there's a ton of reach, ton of impact, but like how'd you do it? And what did you start doing with clients?
I mean, for the first, oh gosh, 2007 until late 2015, I was only just still working as a internet marketing company, and using high end clients, people that were going to generate $1 million or more a year in their business. And I was just using books as something I had to have to market them properly. When I was designing their website, and I wanted to talk about how amazing they were, nothing says that better than to say, by the way, this guy is the best-selling author of the book, blah, blah, blah. And so I would take their signature talks and just make a book. They'd literally show up
Yeah.
to their website or, the draft of their website, wherever we were in the concept, and be like, when did I write a book? How am I a best-selling author? And I'd be like, yeah, we did that for you from, this recording of this talk you did.
Yeah.
And then a coach one day was talking to us and she just said, she's like, everybody needs that. Everybody would like to know how to write their book, how to make it a bestseller, how to really do those. And so I created a system. In fact, for the most part, probably just about anybody that's got a program to help people become best-selling authors is probably using some part of the system I created way back then. And is using it to help people as well. And we just went and it just kind of took over everything we're doing. And so now all I do is work with authors and predominantly helping people become bestsellers.
Amazing. That's incredible. And what's this? What happens in this system? What does it entail?
So the foundational element of it, more than anything else, is it's not about you. I remember one time I was sitting in a meeting, and a person, I don't know if you know who Lisa Nichols is. She was in the book The Secret. She said, "Your message is not and never was about you. It's only as good as what it was meant for the person that's meant to hear it." And that just really hit me like a knife through the heart, because it's like, all these things that we know are only as good as we share them, going back to what we said earlier.
Yeah.
And so when a person really understands that what's inside of them, what they know, what they do is only as good as it's given to somebody else, that's then the number one piece of the foundation behind all of the book. And then there's a process to, well, what kind of book should I write and how long should it be and all of that. And honestly, I do all of that via interview. We just hop on a Zoom call and just have a conversation not dissimilar to what you and I are having right now.
Yeah.
And we take the material from that and turn it into an initial draft, the story flow document for the book, and then add in the rest of the content we need. And then it's edited, covers done for it. It's formatted for print and digital, and then we have a whole system of understanding how the algorithm for Amazon works that we guarantee people they will be a bestseller. I've done literally thousands of them with 100% success rate.
Wow. That's incredible. I mean, it doesn't sound like it's too much of a burden on the people, because usually with a book, it's like, we're going to be working day in, day out, day in, day out, day in, day out. But this seems like it's more of a seamless process.
Yeah. It's the same process that was based off of what I said before, where multimillionaires were just showing up and having a book done. It's that same process
Yeah.
brought down to a price point, and to, pretty much anybody can do it and afford to be able to do it and get it done.
Yeah. No, it's incredible. That's awesome. And where do you see the future of books? Because as we talk about books, I'm sitting there thinking about it. I'm like, we got paperback, we got ebooks, we got audiobooks. Like, what else is there? Is there anything coming more of this? Like, what could this really be?
Well, there's two ends to the answer to that question. Number one is I I'm a big proponent of books moving to the point where the book literally becomes a free giveaway. A lot of people are already doing that. A lot of people, you've maybe even interviewed some that have referred to your book as being an expensive business card,
Yeah.
because you'll throw a business card away, but you won't throw a book away. You might put it in the free bin at a garage sale, but you're not going to throw a book away.
Yeah.
So if we really took the industry, and I think it's moving that way, to where
Yeah.
books will, because most ebooks eventually become, the free giveaway to get somebody's email address to join your
Yeah.
mailing list. We've already done that in ebooks. And we can pretty easily do that with print books. One of the biggest marketing things that's happening right now is somebody will say, get my print book for free, just pay the shipping and handling, and it's like $7 or whatever, is what they
Yeah.
end up charging you. So there's a lot of that kind of thing. The next step then becomes, the whole concept of making that an NFT, making that a, if you will, work of art, and allowing then the author to, if you will, be part of the transaction for all of eternity in the sale of that book, of that material, and I know there's some artists that are rolling over in their grave, like, imagine if Van Gogh's estate could make money every time one of his paintings sold, if he got 1% even of the, $10 billion or $10 million that one of his paintings, I mean, his family would be set for life. The same thing should be, especially with NFTs, is very possible to be possibly available with a book. And so your book then becomes that resource that is always tied to you, the author, that you always get a tiny little cut of it, but it also really empowers that person to continue sharing it out into the world. Especially then when we add on top of that, the course that we're going to teach it, so that it's not just a book, but it's like, okay, now here's how to apply that, and put both of that, and even going as far out as then empowering people, here's a product that's all boxed up and ready to go for you. It has the book, it has the course, it has everything. And it has the full unlimited rights for you to sell it and resell it as many times as you want to. And me, the author, oh, by the way, I happen to get paid every time you sell it too. And I make a little bit, it might be 10%, it might be 1%, and you're not going to care because you've got an already boxed, ready to go product that's already been made a bestseller that you have the full rights to sell.
Yeah.
It'd be like, imagine if you bought a Lamborghini. This is a little bit far-fetched of an example, but imagine if you bought a Lamborghini and then you could sell all of your neighbors' Lamborghinis.
Yeah.
and do it in an affordable way.
Yeah, I mean, the NFTs are it's non-fungible tokens, and it's very profound because what would end up happening usually is the book sells once for, let's go, 22.95 or 12.95 or whatever it is. It's one sale. There's a print cost. There's an everything. There's no transaction after that. With what happened with this NFT is there's value behind this book, because if you were to resell the NFT, then someone else would also purchase that and then also get the book as well. And the cool thing about this is I actually went to a conference that was an NFT ticket. And when I purchased it, it was like $500, I think, for the ticket. And then current day, I believe the conference ticket that doesn't allow you to go to the conference anymore, it literally doesn't allow you to go to the conference anymore, is like $350. So I'm like, okay, so how much really was that conference? Like, what really was the value of this? Because the really cool thing about NFTs is that if the artist wants to add, hey, because you guys are like my first book purchasers, you guys also get a free Ask Me Anything, or you get a free ticket to my conference, or whatever it is. You can always add value to that ticket. That's one of the really, really cool things about NFTs, is that the value can always be added.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's the case, if you say one thing, the price might skyrocket. But you need to build that audience, and the NFT actually builds that audience for that reader, which is pretty profound.
Yeah.
I think.
I mean, it is for books. The perfect example, really honestly, is rap music.
Yeah.
If you think about the song Super Freak,
Yeah.
from the 70s, and all of the different rap songs that use one piece of that
Yeah.
song, you've got all kinds of songs that are out there that have been, are probably more well known than Super Freak ever was. And I don't know that Rick James is making any money off of
It's
any of those
ridiculous.
songs. But I mean, that's the perfect example of it, because, then you allow the ability for a person to, and then you can really empower somebody to, like, have you ever seen the poster with the little cat, where it's like, when you get to the end of your rope, tie a knot and hang on, and the cat's, like hanging on for
Yeah.
dear life. Imagine if you were the person who said that originally in your book, and you could
Yeah.
empower people to make posters that had your quote off of it, and they could make, the millions upon millions of dollars that they've made off of that. And oh, by the way, you make a couple of pennies per dollar that they make off of that, just because it was a quote out of your book.
Yeah. No, it's definitely profound stuff. It's really, really interesting on where books can go, especially where IP can go, because you own the intellectual property of a book, which most people don't even consider. So if someone was going to start a book today, what would be their approach? Would they contact you? What would you recommend someone try this on their own? Like, what do you think?
So I made it as just easy as possible as I possibly can for people. I've got a free gift for you. And embedded in this free gift is a link to the evergreen version. It's a YouTube video of my Write Your Bestseller in 1 Hour workshop. I've done it thousands of times. And I know people that have written more than a dozen books just off of what's in that workshop. I mean, I don't just, how you go to some workshops and they're just really basically selling to you for an hour. I mean, I give you some
Yeah.
information and I tell you about people's success, but then we get right into the segment, step one is this, step two is this, and you'll write your whole book, now,
Yeah.
the cool part about it is it's a video. So if you want to go back and listen to a part of it, you can rewind it and do that. And then the guide is called the Ongoing Wealth Guide. In fact, if you go to ongoingwealthguide.com, you can get that
Yeah.
for free. That's my free gift to you and all of your
That's awesome.
listeners. And like you said, that link's in there, but it also then goes through the 5 things that you need to do to truly create ongoing wealth. I love the word abundance because, let's face it, abundance doesn't change if you pay your bills,
Yeah.
because if you have $10,000 in the bank and you buy a house for $9,999, that doesn't mean that you're not still abundant. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or even if you gave away all $10,000 to starving kids somewhere, that doesn't in any way diminish your abundance. The fact that you had the ability to give that says even more about your abundance. And so when I talk about ongoing wealth, I'm really talking about the ability to be able to generate a revenue stream that comes in so that it can go back out. If you think about, like those big pipes, I was watching this road be constructed and they took this giant, it was probably 50 or 100 feet wide pipe that they put into the side of this mountain. And then they built the highway that went through it. It's kind of fun over the course of the almost 2 years that it took them to build it. But the input side of it and the output side of it are the same. And the bigger the pipe is, the more that can flow through it. And if we think of our lives as being that huge conduit with as much input as output, you've also got that flowing through you, and it is part of your life for the time that it flows through you. And that's really ongoing wealth. And I do go through the 5 steps of how you can create that and maintain that and have that in your life.
That's incredible. Thank you so much for sharing all that. I'm excited to check out the ongoing wealth formula, because financial literacy and really understanding and really freeing up your day is one of the most important things, because there's so much time where we live these tedious lives of, I think Joe Rogan said it best, lives of quiet desperation, where you're just like, oh my God, I got to do this again. Really?
Yeah.
And it's just, how do you open up your life? Yeah. That's incredible.
Ongoingwealthguide.com.
Yeah. I'll put that in the show notes. And Steve, if people want to connect with you, how should they reach out? Is there anywhere?
So the easiest thing to do, I do have thrivingbestsellers.com, which is my company website, but the easiest thing to do is just jump on the phone with me. If you go to askstevekid.com, AskSteveKidd.com, that'll take you straight to Calendly. That's the link, jumps straight to Calendly, and you can block off 15 minutes to just talk to me.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll throw that in the show notes. And Steve, this has been awesome. I really appreciate the time.
Oh, I love spending the time with you, Jordan.
Thank you for reaching the end of the podcast. For that, we'll give you a complimentary coaching session in the link below with Edwards Consulting. Hope to see you there, and have a great day and keep clocking in.